The following is a paid commercial program. Opinions expressed are the sole responsibility of the party expressing them.
Good morning, this is Hans Anderson. Good morning, Utah. I hope you'll participate with us today in K-Star's call-in talk show, Friday morning. Last week, I had a special guest on, Susie Schnell, and we were talking about the Alpine School District vote, which is coming up this Tuesday, along with all of the other elections, in which we encouraged people to vote for 4 different candidates. The one I've known and talked with personally was Scott Bell. And he encouraged me to bring on Susie, which I did. And Susie, have you got the other candidates here? You probably know these people better than I do. I brought her back. Well, let me tell you why first. After last week's show, I had a caller call in who said she really liked what I had to say, and she'd listened to my show several times, and she enjoyed it. And then she said, however, there was a lady in her ward, and I hope that lady's listening today, because this listener was going to call her back and ask her to listen today. Because she said this respected lady in her ward was saying, well, Susie stretches the truth. Susie exaggerates things. Susie did not portray the truth. And she went on to tell me that, according to her friend, who I hope is listening because we want to address these issues today, that the Alpine School District had disassociated themselves from Goodlad over 3 years ago. And why was Susie still bringing this up?
This is not true.
Well, that's why I called you, because I'd done some of my own research previously, and I determined that. But I thought, well, since Susie's name was being taken for evil...
Good and evil all over
yes,
here.
Yes. She has her friends and her detractors. But I thought, let's have Susie come back and address this issue because we're having an election in 4 more days. And Susie doesn't do this just to give people a bad time. She does it because she's concerned about her children, your children.
Definitely.
That's why she's here. And that's why she got involved in this. And that's why... we have an election. In this school district, in this country, this city, this state, we can vote for people. And they're going to determine the direction of our ship of state, so to speak. And the school district is the one which, government-wise, most closely affects our children. That's why we're involved in this. That's why we're saying vote for Scott Bell and vote for these other people, because the ship of state in our schools, we don't like the direction it's going. And that's why we're here. Now, I've also invited a fellow named Oak Norton to participate, and he's on the line. Oak, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Got a little touch of an echo there maybe, but you're coming through fine. Okay, Susie?
Yes.
Where do you want to go here?
Well, first you asked me about candidates. We do believe that these people that we have 7 school board members currently on. 4 of them are up for election. The 4 people who we endorse, because they're the conservative voice. They realize the threat of John Goodlad and this democracy agenda. They are, before they even knew that John Goodlad, they were wonderful citizens who just care deeply about children, and they want nothing more than to help to improve the Alpine School District. We highly endorse Scott Bell. Scott is in Orem, and he's running against Jody Sundberg. Tim Osborne is the current incumbent, and he's running in American Fork against John Burton.
And you endorse?
Tim Osborne.
Tim
He
Osborne.
is the only incumbent that we do endorse. The reason being, and I understand that I've not met him, but I understand that John Burton is a very nice, kind man, very well known in the community, good guy. A lot of these people are. The problem is they have a more progressive view of education instead of a traditional
philosophy that they're...
Or they either do or they don't see this. They don't see the threat of this. He worked in the district for Oak. If I'm getting this wrong, tell me. I think 30 years.
About that.
About 30 years he worked in the district, and he was retired. And so we believe the district decided, hey, we need to have another voice that agrees with us. So they asked John Burton. Kind man, good man, I've heard. But it's obvious that they want to get rid of the one person on the board that is standing up for parents. Okay, in Alpine, Highlands, Cedar Hills, and parts of Lehigh, Wendy Hart is the candidate of choice. She's running against incumbent Chrissy Hanneman. In Lehigh to Eagle Mountain, huge area, Paula Hill, and she's running against Donna Barnes. And so we strongly endorse Paula Hill, Wendy Hart, Tim Osborne, and Scott Bell to bring a conservative voice to this district.
All right. Well, that's why we've called this meeting. Now, what the stuff we talked about last week, you have to listen. I've spent a lot of time reading up on this. I got up 3 o'clock in the morning, 3 or 4 days ago, and started looking up John Goodlad. When people challenge my guests, I like to, go do a little looking. And I went to some of his pro John Goodlad.
Mm-hmm. That's where we pick up everything.
Yeah, that's
too.
where you find this
stuff.
stuff.
We pick it straight from his words. We're not getting secondhand information.
Yeah, and it was fascinating that our school district would pick up that man's words and put them on our schools for slogans.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was amazing. Who do these people run with? One of the things I thought was most amazing, well, I had one little story I wanted to tell here, and then I'll shut up. But when I saw, where they'd taken the sign down from John Goodlad,
mm-hmm.
That they had over there, what was it up, 7-8 years? Whatever it was up, I don't know.
Do you know how long that sign was
up?
up?
I'm not sure how long they had it up, but it has been years.
Well, they've torn it down now.
It's enculturating our young into a social and political democracy slogan that used to be the mission statement until a lot of parents got upset about it, and then they watered it down to educating all youth to ensure the future of our democracy. Same thing, a little bit different wording.
A little bit different. Just wasn't an exact quote from John Goodlad. And now
it was. You could find that.
That's just a
I've
different
read that.
one?
It's just a different one.
Just a different one of
They
John
went on and
Goodlad's.
on about how long it took them to come up with the second mission statement, and they just got it out of one of John Goodlad's books.
Now they're scrubbing up the website.
Oh, big time.
Yeah, trying to clean it up. And when I started reading some of this John Goodlad stuff and then seeing what the Alpine School District is doing now to cover what they've been doing, to tear this stuff down, clean up the website. I thought back about 35, 40 years ago when I was in the Army Reserve and I was up in Fort Lewis, Washington at a summer camp. And we were staying in these big Army tents, and I was a payroll clerk. But anyway, I walked into this big tent, and there was one other soldier in there. I was in there to get something, and he was sitting on his Army cot. He was over there crying. And I went over to him, and I thought he'd had some bad news or something. He's a friend of mine. He's here. And I went up to him. I said, "What's wrong?" And he was crying, and I thought he got some bad news. Well, he pulled up his shirt sleeve, and he said, "Look at this." And he had a big old tattoo on his arm. And this guy he's a good member of the church. He had a responsible position in his ward. And he started telling me about his friends that had taken him out the night before and got him drunker than a skunk, and then got a tattoo artist to put this big tattoo on him. And he said, how am I going to explain this to my wife? And I felt for the guy, because you can't just wash it off. You can't just wash it off. And
good analogy.
Yeah, and what Susie and Oak have done here is they've pulled up the sleeve of the Alpine School District.
Mm-hmm. Shed some light on.
Yeah, they've got a big, ugly tattoo, and they've had it up on their school boards.
Well, they
and
only
you've talked to these people one-on-one. You've tried to get them to alter their ways, and still they defend their association with these friends.
First thing
for years.
Humanists, socialists, atheists. Okay, well, there's my story. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I started with Alpine School District when my oldest daughter, who's now in 10th grade, was in 3rd grade. I hadn't really been following anything going on in the school district, except, you basically, as a parent in the district, you trust, I send my kids to public school and they get taught the things that they're supposed to learn. And my oldest daughter was in 3rd grade. It was the end of the school year. And I went into a parent-teacher conference, and I said, hey, I noticed that my daughter hasn't been taught the times tables yet, and I remember doing that 30 years ago in 3rd grade. When are you going to start doing it? And the teacher said, oh, we don't do that anymore. And I said, what? She said, yeah, it's not part of the curriculum. And I said, what do you mean it's not part of the curriculum? How are the kids going to learn their times tables if it's not part of the curriculum? And she said, this is a 22-year veteran teacher, said, well, the smart kids will just pick it up as they go. I about died. I thought, the smart kids will pick it up? How? Well, what about the rest of the kids that aren't just naturally inclined to learn their times tables? We now think it's not necessary. And, sparing you a few years of history and everything that went on, the bottom line is it took Orem threatening to break off from Alpine School District before Alpine would drop this math program. But for several straight years, they didn't teach kids the times tables. They didn't teach them long division. They didn't teach them division by fractions because it wasn't part of the curriculum. And so they changed elementary school math. This program was used K-5. And then they had, they still use connected math in grades 6 to 9 and interactive math in grades 10 through 12. So all the way up the ladder, you had kids. And I had a neighbor 3 doors down from me that said, Oak, when you first started this, I thought you were just a nut. And he said, I got to thank you now. It was a year and a half after I'd started this. He was at home that night, or one night that week when he came to me, and he saw his oldest daughter, who was in 10th grade Algebra 2. He said, I looked at her, this thing that looked like a magazine on the table, and I said, what's that? And she said, that's my algebra book. And he said, what? And he started looking through it, and there were no math problems in it. And he said, how could this be your math book? And somehow he started to ask her some math questions, just basic times table stuff. And he discovered she didn't know her times tables. She was in 10th grade and a straight A student. And her sister, who was in 8th grade, same story. But her the other siblings that were in 3rd and 5th grade, this is almost 2 years into the math fight, they knew their times tables because the school district was starting to take some action finally after thousands of parents had been outraged over what had happened. So that's how I got my start with school-related advocacy. We actually got the state of Utah to raise its math standards over this because of what Alpine was doing. They're kind of the poster child for progressive education in Utah. Everybody.
And those of you that don't know what progressive means, that's not a positive.
It's not progress.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about good stuff here when we use that term.
No,
it's good, lad. It's not good stuff.
The term progressive arose from a period roughly around 1890 through 1920, during which John Dewey came in to this picture too. And we'll talk, Oak knows a little bit more about John Dewey that he can tell you. But John Dewey was one of the educational founding fathers. And John Goodlad and many educational philosophers, including a lot of these teachers and administrators, they love John Dewey. And he has done some really good things in education. However, there's some pretty dangerous things about him too. And so what we as parents didn't realize is that while we're upset at the national level of looking at the progressivism that is coming in, and I think Hillary Clinton was one of those gals that ushered it in with one of her statements, how she's, so they don't use the word liberal anymore, they use progressive. But as you know, it was a long time ago in the Roosevelt era and all that progressivism came back too. But anyway, Hillary Clinton, and from then, I remember that announcement over the radio, how she was talking about progressivism, and now that's what they talk about. However, we did not realize as parents that we've had progressive schools. Our public schools are progressive schools. Now, a lot of them across the nations are touted as we have a progressive school. In fact, Barack Obama put his two daughters in 2008. There was a big news thing about putting them in John Dewey's progressive schools. But we didn't really pay attention that that's what's here too, and especially in Alpine School District. It's called progressive education, and it incorporates all kinds of things. It is against the traditional way of educating, and it brings in new things, and it has to do more with equity and the arts and finding constructivism, finding all these things out for yourself. They don't like rote learning, and so that's
I saw
Oak
some
knows
of these
more about that.
statements that.
Hans?
Yes.
Let me tie this together a little bit. Several years ago, when I kind of was hot on the math topic, it actually started over the Constitution, and I went to a school board meeting where they had titled the school board meeting, or not school board, but a community meeting, come and help or discuss the role of public education in a democracy. And so I went that night, and I told myself I'm not going to talk about the math stuff, but I went and I shared some thoughts on, we should really have a class on the Constitution for our kids, because it was Karl Marx that wanted free public education in a democracy to bring us all down to the lowest common denominator, which is atheism. Because then you can't teach in a public setting anything that somebody else doesn't believe, so everything gets lopped off until you get down to that lowest common denominator. And so I shared some of these ideas, sat down, and somebody else brought up the math issue, and that's what got me started for several years. Well, I knew about their sign in their professional development center that says enculturating the young into a social and political democracy, but I didn't do anything about it except to say, that sign is just off base. That shouldn't be there. Really wish you'd take it down, and a lot of other citizens did as well.
So you did not realize at the time this was a John Goodlad, a socialist, an atheist, a humanist.
Exactly.
He just saw the consequences of it, and that's what parents have been seeing for years. They did not put it, when I came and I saw that sign, and I got that sick feeling, and I took a picture of it, and I went back to the site, and I started doing research. I think only then, am I right, Oak? Only then did we realize the real big umbrella that this is all progressive education. Oak saw some early warning signs.
Well, what happened was Susie saw this in February as somebody that I didn't even know Susie. She didn't know me until this all happened for her. A year ago, July, so it was about 8 months before that, was when Tim Osborne on the Alpine School Board sent me an email and said, Oak, look up John Goodlad. And I looked him up. I'd never heard his name before. And that's when everything started to snowball for me.
Where this stuff's coming from.
And didn't he warn the school board members and the superintendent about John Goodlad?
Tim has told the school board members about it. I've told the school board members about it, been telling the public. The school board is largely lulled to sleep. They're not watchdogs for the public education. They're more like
PR
little
people.
lapdogs. Hey, sit here, roll over, play dead. I mean, the district just tells the board what they want them to believe, and the board is not questioning anything. That's why the board needs changed out to people who will question and watch over our public education system, instead of having the district say, well, all the studies say this is the best way to teach math. Well, no, it's not. I filed a grammar request a couple years ago, found out that there were no studies on record at the district. They couldn't provide me a single study to support the math programs they were using, investigations, connected and interactive math. And I said to the school board, look, the district admits they have no studies, and to the contrary, I have showed you studies that say this is horrid, that it is killing our kids in math, and it's obvious that it is, and yet they did nothing about it. Because what do I know? I'm a parent, and not some professional educator that's been to college in an education field.
You know who knows more about this are the people who lived in California through that failed math program of New Math. That's exactly
and
what this is.
They actually helped us get the state of Utah to raise our math standards. Dr. Milgram from Stanford came out. He lived through this whole nightmare in California when they went from one of the top 3 states in the country to second lowest during the 90s. I pointed all this out. Anybody that wants to see the history on this can go to oaknorton.com, and there's loads of information on the math fight out there.
Yeah, one of these websites I came across, I was trying to find out, is it true that the Alpine School District has disassociated themselves from Goodlad?
No.
And
You know
is
what I
this
think that's
through
coming
the
from?
3-year thing?
You know what? I wonder if that's what. The only thing that I can think of why she said that is because they changed the enculturating sign to educating all
Yeah.
youth. Maybe that's what she's referring to.
Well, they throw this stuff around, and well, what I did, I went back and looked up what was a 44, 49 page outline of their October 15 through 17, 2009 on the NNER website. And last year, there's Vern Henshaw listed as one of the panel experts
Oh, yep.
that's speaking.
Yeah.
There's Baugh listed.
Stephen Baugh running for.
Yeah, another person who's not going to help you get your children educated if you happen to believe in correct principles. And the thing that, as I read through the listings of the different panels, as I read through the descriptions, my friends, we're not just talking about, can you define the difference between democracy and republic?
That's ridiculous.
That's
and
ridiculous.
The news keeps talking about that, harping it like we are insane, and that's what this argument is.
Yeah,
it is not.
You need to get on these websites and find out these people are after your children.
Absolutely.
They are after your children.
Absolutely, they're after the minds of the children.
And it's not just bad luck that California dropped from number 3 to number 47 or wherever they were.
You know, you brought
and
up...
our people are associated. And this isn't 3 years ago. This is last year. And they're getting awards from these people. And there's Goodlad there honoring 30 people who he thinks have done so well.
You know, let me... you mentioned Baugh, Stephen Baugh. He's running against Steve Sandstrom in this area. And he is completely a part of this John Goodlad.
Oh yeah, you read the stuff. He's right there. He was one of the on the committee that ran the thing. Did I even?
Yes, that's right. He was an organizer of the conference last year.
So my friends, and I know I've got some people on here that don't agree with what we're saying, but I want you to know that you were misinformed when you said 3 years. Go look. Look on the website. Look who's getting awards. Look who's directing the thing.
5 years ago, Vern Henshaw was there, along with other these administrators.
Well, he was there last year.
But what I'm saying is...
Oh, you're talking about what happened 5 years ago, also. Okay.
Well, I'm saying that he's known for at least 5 years, I'm sure it goes back further, that Bill Ayers was part of this, that he was there at the same conference while Vern Henshaw was part of the executive council. And the tripartite council and the executive committee and running the thing. And Bill Ayers is there speaking about his definition of democracy, which is a very political thing. So when our administrators here in the district say, oh, by democracy, we don't mean anything political. You parents are misspeaking. We mean getting along with each other and everyone liking each other. You know, find that in a dictionary anywhere. Democracy is a political thing. And let me tell you this, too. Last year, 2009, Ann Foster is the executive director of the NNER, which our administrators are a part of. To join the NNER, she says, is to commit to action. It means committing to the principles of the agenda for education and democracy and becoming stewards of our democracy. Education must be the foundation for seeking positive social and political change. It becomes ever more critical that we nurture our students and prepare future educators for teaching and policy making that may resolve inequities in our institutions and our society, renewing and strengthening our democracy. This year, the conference that Bill Ayers was there to keynote, the conference in 2010 was in Illinois. It says the title, Realizing Our Democratic Ideal, and here are the 4 strands which represents the dimensions of democracy. You tell me if this is just feely good, let's be nice to each other. Okay, the 4 strands of what they were mainly discussing: practicing democracy in the classroom, engaging the wider community, creating citizens of the world, considering the implications of policy decisions. Does that sound like let's all just get together? All through their stuff, it's meetings. All political. Goodlad, and they said education is a practical political affair. Bill Ayers says the same thing. You cannot separate schooling from politics.
Yeah, they're trying to get into the classroom. They didn't hold this 3-day seminar up there at Bellevue, Washington, with Vern Henshaw and some of these other people. I got a kick out of that picture of Bulla, one of the advisors to the school district, standing there next to another fellow, and there was Bill Ayers with a big black T-shirt with a big red communist star on his shirt.
To see that, go to saveasd.com.
Yeah, they're spending our taxpayers' money, and those are the kind of people you're hobnobbing with. It reminded me of, if you're running for office, some guy going down to Vegas and having his picture taken with a bunch of showgirls, clothed as the way they are, and saying, "I hope my wife doesn't see this." Well, in this case, we hope the parents in the Alpine School District
I just
don't
realized
see it, but it's there.
They say they're transparent, but if I moved here a couple years ago, 2 years ago from California, if they would have advertised that they were a progressive school district, if they would have said they do it around the rest of the nation, why don't they do it here? Why don't they say we are a progressive school district?
Yeah.
Because when you look up progressive education, you see all the things that they're talking about and all the things that they're touting. And it really does sound pretty innocent until you start digging and finding out who these people are dealing with. The feminists, the gay activists, the social equity, redistribution, all of that. In fact,
now these people may not necessarily be evil, but they're being deceived.
They're being deceived, yeah.
And the reason they're tearing this stuff off the school walls now and tearing it off the website is enough people are starting to look.
Okay, one of the things I want to say, too, is when I first moved here, I was used to gay activist posters all over the walls in California of the schools and the classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I came here, and there were some marvelous posters on the wall. There was democracy and stuff, and I thought, well, this is really good. And they have these inspirational posters all over. Well, I go to my son's school knowing now that I have to look with a different eye. When I first went in, I saw this wonderful stuff, and I thought, wow, finally, we are in Zion. We have nothing to worry about. There's no indoctrination. So looking at it through a different lens, I was at my son's middle school, and there were about 35 posters on the wall, and I thought, I've never heard of some of these people. I've heard of some of them. I know they're progressive. I'm going to look up the other ones. So I took a paper and pencil, and I copied down the authors of all these posters that are all over my son's wall. So you parents out there that think, oh, this is not really in the schools. Okay, who do our administrators think that our children should look up to? Okay, there's one, Robert Green Ingersoll, outspoken atheist. Helen Keller, now these people have done some good things, but she was a Socialist Party member, for those of you. So they are finding people who have contributed to society, but there are many of them, gay activists and feminists.
Humanists, socialists.
Margaret Mead, leader of the sexual revolution. She's got her poster in there. Let's see. We have one guy, Louis Schaffel, known for sports, horse racing, and casinos. That's what everybody wants to have their children look up to. There's a United Nations guy on here. Sonia Johnson, American feminist activist and writer, who was an outspoken supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment back in the 70s, and she belonged to the church. William Hazlitt, he was remembered for his humanistic essays. George Orwell, many people know him, but he writes Animal Farm, but a lot about social injustice. He was a democratic socialist. Billie Jean King, first prominent professional female athlete, also outspoken lesbian. Frank Lloyd Wright, I love Frank Lloyd's buildings, but I didn't realize that he believed in a utopian egalitarian lifestyle, and that's why he went into building these things. He was one of the most radical, stubborn, it says here, most influential people. And he signed this petition, and it was all about John Dewey and Nelson Rockefeller. Anyway, it goes on and on. Civil rights movement. Let's see what else. There's one, Anatole France, I think, believer in hedonism.
Now, these are posters
These are posters, thank you, that
your
are
kid's
on
school.
my junior high school child's hallways, where these people they have posters that look really pretty and colorful. Anyway, there's another one, Phyllis Bottom or Bottom, I don't know, it's Bottom with an E on the end. Golda Meir, dedicated socialist that she was married to, and she was all into utopian society, socialist Zionism. Lyndon B. Johnson, remembered for his Great Society. It goes on. And one of this, there's this one guy, Marcel Proust, he's a French novelist and critic, and he was a Jew, homosexual, and an artist, and he was one of the first novelists to explore the entire spectrum of human sexuality. He was a homosexual part of his life and a heterosexual.
Okay, I'm convinced.
And
These are not good people, and they're on the Alpine
more.
School District.
Out of about 35.
It's not just Good Lad then.
It's the signs are all over if you know what to look for. These 4 moral dimensions: Good Lad, educating all youth to ensure Good Lad, enculturating, Good Lad. These posters, it's all over the place. There are some really good things going on. The teachers are really good. This is a national movement that has seeped into Alpine School District and other districts here in Utah and across the nation. We have, as parents, have got to know what's going on and not just go, oh, this is nice. My child doesn't have very much homework. Oh, our teachers are all religious. They must be really good. And they are. There's a lot of them that are. But I don't think that the teachers are aware also of so much of this influence. How come we don't have things in our schools from founding fathers? How come we don't have, I just read off to you, I'm not just hand picking. Those were out of about 35 posters, there were only about 2 or 3 that were not like that. That were not there, that there were people that I would look up to.
Somehow the people they find a quote. You remind me about 20 years ago, I was on a high council and visiting a ward, and a good friend of mine, he was a bishop down there, and he worked for the Alpine School District during the summers. Let's see, I don't know if he's still teaching or not, don't want to get him in trouble. But anyway, he was telling me about during the summers, he would go in and write these additional books or teacher aid books on the books that the Alpine School District was using. And he was telling me about, he was working on one in the state of Utah, how it became a state. And he was telling me about how they'd cleaned out most of the stuff, including the seagulls. That mentions God. You can't have that. And so anyway, he was telling about how he was going in and trying to put this stuff back into the school books, or for this teacher's thing, so that people would have this additional history, that at least the teacher would have it.
Revisionist history.
Yeah, and they were going through and redoing it, so it's not new. And again, we need people on the school board who are not asleep at the wheel, and that's why we need these new people in there.
These people
Exactly.
Have been there for way too long. It's time for a change.
Hans?
Yes, go
One
ahead.
of the things that we found way back in 2006, that it's online. These are the minutes from one of John Goodlad's NNER executive meetings.
Mm-hmm.
This was during the Proposition 8 issue out in
Battle in
California.
California, yeah.
And there was an op-ed that was published by a BYU adjunct faculty member. This person was subsequently fired. He didn't have tenure. He was let go. And at this NNER meeting, one of the members of the executive board, Ada Beth Cutler, shared copies of an op-ed that this person had written, taking a stand against a constitutional amendment banning gay marriage. She, in this meeting, this is what the minute said. I'm just going to read this. This is a quote. She shared her grave concern about BYU's action and policies that discriminate against homosexuals, given the principles of the Agenda for Education in a Democracy. She asked for discussion on the implications for the NNER and the mission of access and inclusion. Vern Henshaw responded, noting that he was reflecting only his perspective, not representing the larger partnership. He noted that the BYU Partnership Governing Board does not have the authority to change policies at BYU, that the decision and policies do not reflect the actions at the partnership level. He indicated that the partnership coexists with the BYU policies and includes not only BYU but also public school districts that are not bound by the BYU policies. So that's the end of the quote.
There he is,
this is
apologizing for,
He's apologizing
walking away from.
the homosexual agenda. Yeah.
So the NNER, part of their agenda for education in a democracy, that's AED, is to push the homosexual agenda. And it is all over their documents. They are all about the gay movement.
More so every year. More so. This year was even more so than the prior years.
And here's our superintendent. As a member of the board, he knew about this back in 2006 at least, if not before then, because he was on their executive board before then. And the NNER is absolutely about pushing this agenda into our districts, through the curriculum. So it's like John Goodlad, 90% of what he says is common sense. But that other 10% of his agenda is being pumped through this, teacher programs, university programs, collaboration programs, and nobody is, like you said, they're all asleep at the wheel. So even when these things are pointed out, they just say, well, it's not happening here. Surely it's not in our schools. We're the most conservative county in the most conservative state, and we've got good LDS people in positions of leadership. Well, let me tell you.
Yes, we do, however.
Yeah, exactly. We do have that, but when people don't know the facts, it's like President Benson used to talk about, the Book of Mormon is not full of conspiracy theory, it's full of conspiracy fact. And he specifically decried communism and
humanism.
This stuff. Yeah, and humanism. All of the prophets have been talking about this for decades, since the beginning. And all of these things, you can tie Goodlad right back into John Dewey. Goodlad was a John Dewey Award recipient. Dewey was one of the original co-founders of the Humanist Manifesto. And for your listeners that don't know exactly what the Humanist Manifesto is, this is a document that was written back in the 1930s. It was based on the Communist Manifesto. It basically, the most direct parallel is atheism being the goal, and that humanism is elevating man over God. And it's basically the Korihor doctrine for those listeners that are LDS, where it's the management of the creature. It's only what you can do in life. I hadn't read the Humanist Manifesto until this year, and I put up some clips from it on my website and a link at utahsrepublic.org. But the document, after listing off about 14 points that they stand for, one of which here's a clip. It says, a socialized and cooperative economic order must be established to the end that the equitable distribution of the means of life be possible. The goal of humanism is a free and universal society in which people voluntarily and intelligently cooperate for the common good.
Which is what they mean by democracy.
Yeah, and then it ends. This is where I think we have some interesting legal opportunities. It says, so stand the theses of religious humanism. So specifically stated within their manifesto is that they are a religion. Well, Utah state law says that no sectarian religion can be taught in our schools. But we have humanism through John Goodlad being taught in our schools and being put on the walls. I don't know, we may have some opportunities to look at a legal challenge on that as well, because it's a religion.
And by the way, some of you are just tuning in and not realizing.
Yeah,
some
why
of the
did we
things
call this meeting?
So some of John Goodlad's quotes here. He is a humanist. He is a socialist. He's an atheist. Okay, some of the things that he's written. He writes some. He's a national educator who came here about 25 years ago to establish these partnership schools and to bring in progressive education to our schools here and get rid of the traditional education. Earlier in the program, where Oak was saying that the math timetables were not being taught and long division and all of that. Get rid of traditional education, rote education, and bring in this progressive education. Okay, here's some of his quotes. Parents do not own their children. They have no natural right to control their education fully. That's in Developing Democratic Character in the Young. Most youth still hold the same values of their parents. If we do not alter this pattern, if we don't resocialize, our system will decay. That's in his book, Education Innovation. If parents control the education of their children, many children will be deprived of the legitimate choices offered in a liberal society. And another thing he said from Developing Democratic Character in the Young, public education has served as a check on the power of parents. That's just parents. This man goes into morals and patriotism and homosexuality and social engineering and capitalism. Listen to what he says about capitalism. This is in the book Developing Democratic Character in the Young, page 5. This abuse, what's he say? Let's go further. A whole new cycle is often put in motion wherein the name of the game is eliminating competition. The human motivation is commonly referred to as greed. What appears to be a sound economic principle is corrupted by lack of moral principle and compassion for humankind. This abuse discredits capitalism as a potential companion of democracy. So he says the human-induced flaw in the practice of capitalism is, of course, the driving concept of unlimited growth. He doesn't believe in unlimited growth, and everybody should be the same. And so basically, to sum that up, he says capitalism cannot coexist with democracy. So when I'm telling you, some of these administrators, teachers, staffers who are talking about democracy, and when the news discusses, that's what we are, we're democracy and this whole republic democracy, that is not the issue here.
Their democracy is
their
not...
democracy. We're talking a whole, when Lenin and Stalin can come out and say democracy is the road to socialism, they're talking about direct democracy, not a representative democracy. And that is the enculturating statement. Social is enculturating the young into a social and political democracy. There's two things there. Social democracy, which is the gradual change from capitalism to socialism through democratic means. And
the people that are running these
political democracy means direct democracy.
Directors are going, they're socialists, they're atheists, they're communists. You think they'd find better
at the
people
national
to run
level,
around with.
At the national level, I am not purporting that the people here are atheists. A lot of them.
But you think they'd find better people to go sit on boards with and speak with and be on panels and get awards from.
There are plenty of good educators out there. Yep, and this is all progressive education, folks. This is what we're getting. So parents who send their kids to school thinking that it's all about traditional education and that they're just learning academics and a little bit of socialization, a little bit of fun, some curricular activities. Yes, that is happening. However, the people at the administrative level and up through the national level, that is not what their goal is.
People need to see where these things are going. That's why we need to change the direction, and that's why we need to vote for people who have a better understanding of this than the ones which are in there already. Again, who are we talking about voting for here?
In Lehigh to Eagle Mountain, Paula Hill. In Alpine Highlands, Cedar Hills, and a little bit of Lehigh, Wendy Hart. In American Fork, the incumbent Tim Osborne is the only person on the board currently that gets this and that tried to alert the board and the superintendent about the dangers of Goodlad. In Orem, Scott Bell. All these are so important. This, if all of these people get in, the four, that would make a majority in this district, and we could start turning things around. I got a on the Save ASD site, I got someone who said, if you parents, the people in this site, the administrators are saying that that we have to fear our teachers. That's what you're saying. You're fear mongering. And I said no, and I replied back, and you could read this, and I forgot where her comment was, but I said, no, I'm sorry if that message is going through. We are not trying to fear it. That's not what. This is called shining the light on things that are happening. And then on the bottom of her comment to me, she says, if parents would just get behind their teachers and do whatever their teachers want. And I when I wrote back, I said, if the school district would just get behind the parents, because the parents are the ones who spend 100% of their state income taxes and almost 70%, in some cases 70% of their property taxes. We are the voters. We are the ones who delegate the responsibility of schooling to you. They're our children, they're our tax dollars, and this should be a community.
Well, you know, the word is getting out, obviously, because when they start scrubbing their tearing signs off the walls from these people and start cleaning up their website, you're waking up enough people. I came across when I was up at 3 in the morning the other morning.
It happens to the best of us.
Yeah. I came across a website of people who were Lutherans, Christians. They were talking about Goodlad, and they were attacking him for what he was doing to their youth.
Good.
And it was interesting. But I came across one of these quotes. Now, this is from Goodlad. This is from 1979. He wrote the preface to Schooling for a Global Age. And this is a quote right out of Goodlad here. Enlightened social engineering is required to face situations that demand global action now. Education is a long-term solution. Parents and the general public must be reached also. Otherwise, now this is the important part, and this is what Susie and Oak have done, what he warns about. And this Alpine School District apparently didn't read this warning from Goodlad. Here he says, children and youth enrolled in globally oriented programs, which this is humanism and socialism, which they're pushing here.
Worldly philosophies.
Yeah. They may find themselves in conflict with values assumed in the home.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happened. And Susie and Oak are saying, hey, these people are pushing values which are not the ones in your home. And then he warns them. And then the educational institution, which happens to be the Alpine School District we're talking about here today, frequently comes under scrutiny. Thank you, Oak and Susie, and must pull back. And so here, he warns them. If you don't get the parents up to speed, then you're going to have to pull back. And so now they're pulling back. They're scrubbing their website. John Goodlad, who's he, passed the rumor. We stopped this arrangement 3 years ago.
Well,
And so here's the thing is,
And it's
they
not
did the
true.
same thing with the math. When we shone the light on them, they walked into, Barry Graff, one of the curriculum directors, walked into the Orem City council meeting back in 2007, I think it was, and he said, we think a lot of you are here tonight over the investigations math issue, and we just want to let you know that we're going to allow every school the opportunity to choose between to choose between a standards-based program like investigations or a traditional program for next year. So they set up a committee. I'm not going to go into all the details, but they really stacked the deck against traditional math programs. And so the school district chose the Scott Forsman Addison Wesley, essentially. And the week before school, they put an investigations math textbook on every teacher's desk, elementary teacher's desk, and said, you can teach anywhere on the spectrum that you want between standards-based investigations or the Scott Forsman Addison Wesley. And by the way, there's a direct integration plan because these are both by the same publisher. So when I asked the district why they put an investigations math book on every teacher's desk, Vern Henshaw said, oh, they were complimentary copies from the publisher. Yeah, publishers always do that. I mean, thousands of textbooks, they just toss those out as complimentary things.
Kind of like the cigarette companies sending cigarettes to the troops in World War II in Korea free.
Exactly. Get them started. One other thing, in talking about the candidates, Jody Sundberg the other night at a Meet the Candidates event in Orem said that she is all in favor of federal funding and that without it, our schools are going to just decay and fail. That to me is a little fear-mongering, but it's also incorrect. Federal funding only provides 10% of our state education budget. The other 90% is paid for by the citizens of Utah. So if we lost 10%, and she's talking about more money than what we already get. She's talking about this education stimulus stuff. If we were to reject that 10%, we could free ourselves from the Federal Department of Education and say, we're not taking your money, we're not taking your strings. So it would be really nice to have other people on the board that have a more free market approach to education, a more grounded in don't beholden ourselves to federal entities that have an agenda. Anyway.
Well, that's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah, we need people who are going to think out of out of the box. And we also need people who don't find themselves doing photo ops with communists, socialists, atheists, and sitting on boards with them. We need people with a little more sense. And like I say, these people would not be ripping this stuff off their walls
if they didn't have something to hide.
Didn't have something to hide. And you people, enough parents have raised this issue that suddenly they're trying to put a sleeve back over their tattoo.
And yet they they still continue to call us a small minority special interest group or Oaks minions. They cannot come to ever deal with the facts. They deal with emotions. We're presenting quotes. We're presenting facts to them. And they dismiss that and call us misrepresenting them and all of that.
If enough parents woke up.
Oh, they're waking up, but we need more.
Yeah, we need more. If we could get 4 people in there, these people's, we won't be spending taxpayers' money for these people to go off to John Goodlad conferences on socialism and atheism and humanism.
If you look at
and
one
bring
of
that
their
agenda
conferences,
back into our school district.
if you just look at one of their conferences, the titles of we're sending our administrators, educators back to these NNER conferences, and the titles of the classes are horrendous. I mean, it's all about a global democracy movement.
It's feminism, atheism, diversity, multiculturalism, every social thing that they can do, social engineering, but there's nothing. Oak, have you found anything about academics? Unless it says how to teach math with democracy, you're not finding anything academic at any of these things. And no, they have not broken off with the NNER. They have not broken off with John Goodlad. You mentioned humanism, and I wanted to read something. This is very interesting for those people who think, well, there does need to be. The founding fathers didn't want church and state to be together. Well, in 1787, the very year the Constitution was written by the convention and approved by Congress, that same body of Congress passed the Northwest Ordinance. In this Northwest Ordinance, they emphasized the essential need to teach religion and morality in the schools. Here's the way they said it. Article 3, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind, schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. And they say, George Washington goes on, and then they say morality, this is the second point, morality which may be described as, quote, a standard of behavior distinguishing right from wrong. That's not moral relativism, where this is moral absolute, right from wrong. And then, let's see, we also notice that religion and morality were not required by the founders as merely an intellectual exercise, but they positively declared their conviction that these were essential ingredients needed for good government and the happiness of mankind. George Washington, in his farewell address in the Northwest.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports, and let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Reason and experience both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail to the exclusion of religious principle. George Washington said we need morality with religion, and that this needs to be taught in our schools. And what's the danger is going on right now is you see morality all over in the Alpine School District is one of their moral dimensions. They love the moral dimension, but there's nothing about religion. And Bill Ayers is their keynote speaker this last year, a few weeks ago. And he goes around the world talking about the moral obligation he had to blow up the buildings and to create this social revolution.
They turn the words.
Just
like gay used to mean happy, and now it's...
They've hijacked all kinds of words, exactly.
And they're doing it here, and they're doing it in our school district.
Please don't be duped when you see morals, values, democracy, because they're not the same words anymore, that they're not using the same definitions that we good parents are.
Well, we need to change the school board. We need to change it. I think this is neat, though. When I read this statement by Goodlad about if you go too fast, if you haven't got the parents convinced, then the educational institution comes under scrutiny and must pull back. And thank you, people, for helping Alpine School District pull back. Thank you for finding 4 candidates who say we're not just going to pull back and hide and briefly pull the shirt sleeve down over our ugly tattoo of who we run with. We're going to eliminate it.
Yeah, we're going to scrub that tattoo off.
Yeah, it's going to be gone. It's not just going to be. Well, we're down to 2 minutes.
Could
Go ahead.
I put a plug in on a couple of things?
Yeah.
Okay, number one, we've talked a lot about Good Lad quotes. At the SaveASD.com website, the very top article there is a comparison of quotes from Good Lad, Dewey, and other national prominent educators. And next to it, we've got quotes from religious leaders, mostly LDS. There's a C.S. Lewis quote. There's a couple Catholic quotes. Just because we don't know where to find all the others.
Well,
but like you said, there's a Lutheran site out there that's also taking exception.
We need to work on that, and we will. We will bring in quotes from other religions. This is not specifically LDS. This is about all parents.
And I found that one by the Lutherans about 4:30 in the morning. I thought, well, they're in the middle of this fight too. We're
going to grab those from you and use those. And if people are out there that want to, give us some of these quotes too from their religions, please do. We need to join together against this humanistic thing.
Yep, and
we're
the
down
other
to 1 minute. Go ahead, Oak.
Just over a year ago, I started this site, utahsrepublic.org, because I found out that the word republic didn't even appear in any of our Utah State history standards, kindergarten to 12th grade. So we didn't have the word republic there, but we mentioned democracy over and over. And so I started a petition to say, hey, let's just change these 5 standards so that we again recognize that we're a constitutional republic. So if people want to get involved in that and go see a little bit more about that, please visit utahsrepublic.org, sign the petition, get on the mailing list so that you can stay up to date on some of these things.
And get on Save ASD, sign up for that one too so that you can get the updates.
Right. There's a place where you can just go and put your name and your or your address, your internet address, and they'll send it to you.
Right.
Yep.
All right. Well, we're out of time. I want to thank you, my special guests. Thank you for helping to wake the town and tell the people. And my fellow citizens, get out there and vote. Do something Tuesday. You can do it for your children. Let's wake up this place.
Thank you so much for inviting us on your show.
And thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. We'll see what happens in the elections next week. Thank you.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife.